So my guest on this episode of the Neil Wilkins podcast is Mr. Mark Young. Now, Mark is the chief exec at Zona Health Inc. and the creators of the Zona Plus, a blood pressure biohacking tool that we're going to hear a lot more about as we get into this conversation. So if health, wellness, fitness, and kind of really exploring personal development is your thing, and certainly as we're recording this is a perfect time of year where everybody's focused on that kind of thing. If that is your bag, then you are certainly in the right place in this conversation. Mark, welcome to the show.
Well, I appreciate the invite, Neil. It's always my pleasure to join smart people and talk about fun things.
Absolutely. Well, this is it is a smart thing that we're going to be talking about because, I mean, this is right at the center of this concept of biohacking, isn't it? I know Dave Asprey has been a bit of an advocate of yours, I think, with the work that you're doing. And that's always an interesting kind of little nod towards, hey, I might be on the right route here. But before we kind of get into the products and kind of your kind of aspirations for where you see this whole kind of field going, I just wanted to take a little bit of a backward step. And just for those in the audience who don't know you, a little bit of a kind of a backward kind of into the past and kind of what kind of brought you to this kind of field where you are today.
Well, I'm a weird little unicorn, Neil. And I hate that introduce yourself comment because like that always opens this can of worms. So I'm a weird little unicorn because I am an entrepreneur. I do have a PhD in functional medicine. So to the biohacking audience, yes, I absolutely love that space. I love the medical space. And I believe that health is wealth in that area of personal accountability and, that nobody pays the price when you do it wrong other than you. So the reality is that I believe that there is an aspect of that. And I think people confuse this longevity space with trying to live a long time when in fact, the majority of people that I'm friends with in the longevity space, it's not about living a long time. It's living some really quality years right up until the expiration date. Nobody other than maybe Brian Johnson is actually denying that there's an expiration date. But aside from that, I say that, yes, I am the CEO at Zona.com, which is a company that focuses on, I will say, natural intervention, but health solutions for people who are dealing with cardiovascular issues, or even those that are not. And we can talk about that in more length. But your question, how did I get here? That's a great question because my primary business is I actually run an advertising and marketing agency that specializes in health and wellness companies. So Zona kind of came to me rather than me going to it. And I was an investor in that business many years ago and then ended up at the board's request, stepped in as the interim CEO, which turned into permanent CEO, and run this company as a bit of a side hustle because we're in the midst right now of FDA clinical trials. So we're in the process of getting full FDA approval to make claims against the device. But the science of the device is fantastic. But, your audience, you mentioned to me that your audience is, their sweet spot is that they love talking about marketing and business and all this kind of stuff, but also having a balance towards, personal life and work-life balance type stuff. And I think that I don't function at my peak professionally or personally when my health is compromised. And that may be something as somewhat benign as eating habits, right? Like all of these things need to be optimized for any of them to be optimized. And whether that's talking about business and marketing, whether that's talking about cardiovascular health, whether that's talking about time away from the office, I think one of the biggest mistakes that people make is the compartmentalizing of these areas of their lives because nothing is compartmentalized.
Yeah, I love that. And I think this just whole attitude of kind of almost sort of holistic, to use the broadest kind of sense of that word. Absolutely. It has to be holistic, doesn't it? Because you're not going to be successful in business if you're not well, because you're always going to be struggling and you're going to be pushing water uphill, to use the metaphor, but it's going to be a really hard journey. And I love that idea as well of, longevity is the quality of the years, not the number of years. Obviously, yeah, you want to optimize the number of years too, but it is that kind of that quality feel. Yeah, and I think it has to, doesn't it? I mean, it's almost that you can't kind of be a success in life in the broadest, again, sense of the word success, without really adhering to all of the best principles for personal development and professional development. I mean, I'm guessing that's something that's really kind of close to your heart, this holistic view.
Well, what's interesting, and again, holistic is right up my alley. That's what I love discussing. But I actually made a comment recently that I try to exist, and particularly in 2026, as we were talking about moving into the new year here. That is, I believe that there's a mind, body, spirit that exists with everyone, and it's this physiology, psychology, theology kind of connection. And I laughingly say that I'm the guy who actually has a doctorate in physiology, a master's degree in clinical psychology, as well as a master's degree in theology. And I'm like, so I'm kind of weird in all of those spaces. And, people ask if I break my goals for the year into buckets, right? Because people are like, well, this is what I want to do with my health, and this is what I want to do with my finances. And this, and I'm like, my goals this year, interestingly enough, and I use the word converge. And it was a very intentional word for me, because it's like, I'm not trying to exist well in each of those spaces. I want to exist well where all of those spaces converge. If you think of those things as a Venn diagram, where yes, I can be the best physical self I am and be an emotional wreck, and I can be a very balanced person who's very much out of balance in my health or spiritual life, and I can be a super spiritual person and be an absolute train wreck to society. Like, all of those scenarios exist, and my intention, and I think this exists for anybody, specifically narrowing in on that word holistic, is find where those things converge, and where those things converge is where you want to exist. That's where that balance, as you said, takes place, and it's the three-legged stool type situation, that you can't have one longer than the other, or the whole thing is going to tip over.
I'm loving this. I think there's something really kind of pure and simple about this, because often we overcomplicate this stuff, don't we? I mean, it can be that, I'm not reading enough, or I'm not listening enough, or I'm not putting this into practice every day because I'm feeling tired or whatever. There's always a reason not to do these things. But that sweet spot right at the center of everything, where things converge, to use your word, just feels so simple and so pure. It just feels like, whoa, wouldn't that be good? But I mean, how can we do that though, when life, as it always is super hectic? There never feels like there's enough time. We're pulled in lots of different directions. We've got all this instability around the world, outside of our kind of like local kind of community, etc. There's a lot of pressures that go against that lovely kind of sense, sort of self kind of centering, if you like. I mean, it's not easy, is it?
Oh no. And the truth is, if you've ever read Stephen Covey's book, First Things First, like I go back to that on a regular basis. And it's this idea that, we live in this, Johari window, as he explains, that these quadrants of importance versus non-importance, and then urgency versus non-urgency. And we spend our lives dealing with the urgent, and we don't spend enough time dealing with the important. And because of that, we never get out of the urgency. Like, the urgency will always exist, because urgencies arise when we don't deal with the important things. And that can be health related, right? It's, people say, oh, it's so expensive to eat healthy. And I'm like, well, figure out how expensive it's going to be when you don't. And that's not just the cost of healthcare. That's the cost of sick days. That's the cost of, not being able to earn to your potential because your brain isn't as sharp as it could be. Or, people ask me, like, how much money do you spend in supplements in a month? And I'm like, probably a car payment, but, not your problem. I didn't ask you to pay for it, because I show up every day. And even on the bad days, I show up every day, because I keep my health in such a way that I can. And truthfully, from that perspective, there is that balance, again, that needs to exist, right? It is, putting in the effort on the front end, making sure that the important things are handled, making sure, yes, I know that you need to take time away to spend quality time with your wife and children, and your career may not move to the level that you want it to because you have to step away. But literally nothing determines a greater career life statistically than a happy marriage. Like, people who are happily married tend to have better careers, and I don't think that's because they've got a wife who understands all their time in the office. That's because they actually step away from the office to fill their cup. And it's making sure that that happens, making sure that, people who are living with, happy wives, happy families, they tend to have a greater purpose when they do get to the office, right? Like, there's a greater something. Now it's a legacy play. It's not just about accumulation. And I think that matters. And I think all of that stuff balances. And, my recommendation or advice to anybody is, make a column of what are the things that you're doing that are urgent, what are the things that you're doing that are important, and figure out what important things you're neglecting because they're not urgent. Going to the gym tonight at 6 o'clock is not urgent for me, but I will leave my office at 6 o'clock to get to the gym on time because I understand it's important. And if I don't do that for a period of time, what is it? 1 day is a miss, 2 days is a habit. It's a matter of, that's an important thing that needs to be balanced. And then when I get home, if there's work left over, I'll take care of it. But I need to stop. I need to press the pause button to deal with the important things. I have to take the time to prep a meal. Yesterday I was out, and I laughingly say that getting back from the holidays, like, I'm having to be much more disciplined about diet. And yet getting back yesterday, I was like, no, I've got chicken in the fridge. And I actually went out for a run after I got home from work. And it's kind of a funny thing. You mentioned the biohacking, and I'm testing this EMS suit right now, which is killing me. I don't know if you're familiar with electromuscular stimulation, but it is brutal. So I went out for a run wearing this electrical suit, which is crazy. And I'm like, I'm tired. I've got my wallet. I should probably just, grab something to eat while I'm out. I'm like, no, you literally turned the oven on and pulled the chicken out of the fridge before you went for the run, knowing that if you didn't, you probably would just stop someplace while you're out. It's like, it's important. It's the intention that we put behind those types of things and building the guardrails that protect it.
So if it's about being pretty planful, which it certainly sounds like it is, then I guess a lot of this is about saying no, because it is quite easy to overload, isn't it? This is the thing, is like the latest fad, the new technology, the opportunity. Your friend says, let's do this, and you say yes and yes and yes, and then you get overloaded, and then you lose that sense of, oh, hold on a moment, that sweet spot at the center that I was aiming for, that convergence. Now it all seems very kind of, disparate. It all feels like it's a bit out of control. So is the majority of this about saying no, then, to really keep that sense of centering? Because to be able to do that thing at 6 o'clock, it means you're probably saying no to a number of other opportunities.
Yes. Well, and I'm gonna actually take that a step further too, Neil. And that is, I was having a conversation with a friend yesterday who was talking about, naturopathy and functional medicine, and was talking about, her son and so on and so forth. And we got into this conversation about, well, I do this and I do this and I do this. And I'm like, all of that's fantastic. I'm like, but the first question, I'm like, I get asked on a regular basis, as a functional medicine doctor, like, what should I be taking? What should I be doing? I'm like, and the problem is my go-to answer is usually, I don't know your physiology. Like, functional medicine is about source and origin and upstream causes. Like, I don't know enough about you to give you that answer. Like, if you want to run some lab panels, I can give you a link, but without that, it's tough for me to answer. I'm like, but I've actually been changing my default answer. And my answer has been, I think we spend too much time thinking about what we need to add, and we stop asking the question about what do I need to remove? Because, I believe beauty exists in the more simple things. And I believe that's where balance and holistic treatment takes place, is how do I eliminate things from my life? And sometimes that's calendar items. Sometimes elimination is food. Sometimes elimination is medications and supplements. Sometimes elimination is people. It's relationships that need to be eliminated. Like that, sometimes I think it's a matter of like I'm looking for the supplement that's going to, help my diabetes, rather than trying to figure out what are the food intakes that are causing my diabetes. Like this isn't a matter of constantly having to add. And the visual picture that I get from that is is this scale that we're constantly trying to balance, except rather than having two sides of the scale, there's like 12. And every time I put a marble on one of them, they all spin out of control, and I'm trying to put in 16 different things, right? Because, well, I just got a new doctor. Well, the new doctor wants me to do this whole new routine. Well, the whole new routine is now pushing me into a new calendar, which is causing me stress at work. Well, the stress is making me not sleep. Well, now that I'm not sleeping, it's causing this. And how do I remove as much stuff as possible to get back to the most basic form, and then relaunch from that setting? Like, and I think that the most healthy thing that most people can do is find the reset button. And maybe I'm speaking to myself here more than other people, as you and I were talking even before the recording, but it's like, that's literally what I'm doing in my own life right now. Is where's the reset button? How do I just hit the reset button on some of this stuff and go back to my factory settings? Because I think I've got too many apps installed, and I've got too many background softwares running, and I have too many things pulling on my bandwidth, that I'm able to give the essential amount of energy to anything. And I want to, I'm using obviously internet and computer metaphors, but I want to pull that from in a medicinal standpoint and pull that exact same metaphor into physiology, because we often get into what's going on with systems of the body. And I want to, again, I springboard into this, and that is, your body has a finite amount of energy that it gets to spend in a day. Whatever your belief is on calorie counting or quantum fields, from A to Z, there's a dozen different ways of trying to measure that. But you get so much energy to expend in a day, and your body has a lot of complex systems that are competing for that energy. It's often why when people are under, adverse psychological conditions, they end up physiologically ill, because the bandwidth gets pulled from the immune system for use in other types of areas. Or when people exert themselves physically too much, they end up getting sick. Well, why? Well, because you pulled bandwidth from your immune system. You didn't recover the way that you should have. And because you pulled the bandwidth, all of a sudden you've got a weak connection, to use internet terms, right? You've got an unstable connection in that immune function. The same thing happens, like I said, in the body as happens in networks. There's nothing new under the heavens, right? The way that networks and computers are designed very much emulates the exact same way that the human body functions, with all of its networks and interactions, and the way energy plays together. And in that same vein, I've been asked, like, what's your favorite biohack? I'm like, fasting. One, costs nothing. That's cheap. Anybody can do it. And the best thing about fasting is not only does it clean up the body, but if you can shut down your digestive system, you've created available bandwidth. And the available bandwidth that you've created has actually re-energized other systems in the body that you didn't even know were failing. And I'm gonna go to that Venn diagram and talk about even the idea of fasting as a spiritual connection. In religious circles, fasting is almost a commandment, if not a recommendation, because it brings clarity. And I'll go into the ancient wisdom category and tell you, sure. Well, because when you're shutting down the need for the energy to be used for the source of food digestion, you're increasing bandwidth that your brain is able to pick up. So now my brain is functioning more optimally because there was energy left over. The bulb is a little bit brighter because it wasn't being used for all of these other things. Fasting is one of the best things to promote immune health, because you're just giving extra bandwidth to the other parts of the body that need it. And we have a tendency to stress and indulge. And the problem is the stress and indulge now forces additional resources. Take like the eating 4 hours before we go to sleep. Like, don't touch food 4 hours before you go to bed, because when you go to bed, you're in recovery mode, and nothing recovers when you're in active digestion. Like, you're going to bed and you're not actually recovering. You're sleeping, but it's not a good sleep because your body's still trying to process because you left leftovers. It's part of the reason why I'm going in 100 directions here on you, Neil, but it's part of the reason why we're told not to go to bed angry, because your brain will not shut off and recover. Like, you're still actively processing that information. You need to bring resolution to things before going to sleep, or you won't recover in that capacity. So yeah, I mean, I can give you 1,000 different examples, but it all boils down to the balance of all of those things together, and the elimination of the things that are causing problems. And I believe
Uh,
when we get down to that more simple side of life, everything harmonizes.
And I love this idea of the reset being an opportunity to literally withdraw, retract, whatever word you want to say. And I love the idea that fasting enables you to do that, because obviously you've created a space in terms of time, because you're not having to prepare the food, sit down, eat the food, then do the washing up or whatever it is that you're going to be doing. So there's an actual time there that can be part of this kind of reboot reset, which is wonderful, as well as the physiological impacts that are going to then enable you to probably think more clearly about, okay, what do I need to lose in the whole mix of things that I've overloaded, emotionally, mentally, professionally, wherever it's coming in. So I love that as being a really key starting point to kind of, sort of, just withdraw away from a number of different opportunities, but at the same time creating the energy, because that is important. Because I can imagine some people, not everybody, but some people listening to this will think, oh, Mark, sounds good, but you're just giving me another thing to do in my already busy day. But actually what you're saying is, I'm making it easier for you. I'm giving you permission to just stop doing certain things. And if it feels right, continue with those withdrawals. I mean, it just feels it's actually easier than it is difficult, isn't it?
Well, and it's so funny you say that, Neil, because one of the things that was going through my mind as you were saying that, truthfully, and I almost want to go back and redo I'm the New Year's resolution guy. Like, I put like 50 things on my list, and when I do that, like, I actively try to accomplish them throughout the year. But one of the things that I think that I need to be better about, is you made me think, like, man, I wish I'd have had this conversation with you a week ago, because I probably would have created my New Year's resolutions uh, and created the entire list of things I was going to eliminate from my life rather than things I was going to accomplish. Like, what are the things I can remove, as opposed to things that I can accomplish? Because accomplishment normally means that I'm going to add this other thing to my schedule, or I'm going to spend this amount of resources to do this. And my encouragement to people, especially, again, like I said, we're here in the first of the year, like, I'm going to go revisit my own goals, because some of my goals are downsizing wardrobe. Like, okay, I've got too many clothes, like, get rid of the stuff, purge things out of the house. Like, I want to get rid of those things and, eliminate, certain, things from my life that are stressful. Like, those things are all part of my list already. But it really makes me start to think about, do I have a goal for how many days off I want? And if you're familiar with strategic coach, you know what that is?
Mm.
So Dan Sullivan, Dan's a personal friend, but one of the things that I would actually say is, Dan always talks about free days, that you need to book yourself 150 free days a year. And, you got 100 of them already, just because if you count 50 weeks with Saturday and Sunday, there's 100 of your days already. But where are you getting, like, what are you doing that's getting you those other free days? And how are you just blocking your calendar enough to say no to outside stimulus and give yourself the opportunity to do that? And for me, like, I tend to attend a lot of conferences and industry events. And for me, it's a great opportunity. My COO was always like, no, you are going. Because when you're able to get out of the office and go to those things, you just come back with more clarity. And some of it is being around like-minded people. Some of it is just, just getting away from the melee of life. Some of it is being around, people smarter than me. So all of that plays in. But I really do think that that's a New Year's resolution. Like, set an intention for what goes away.
I love this. The one thing I love about podcasts like this, Mark, is that I enter into the conversation thinking, this is how I think the conversation's going to go. It's kind of where we're going to end up. And honestly, I mean, you've just turned the whole thing on its head, absolutely, completely. I'm going to have to go back now and look at my New Year's resolutions. I've only got a couple, actually. They're quite light ones. Normally, as a very planful person, I normally have a big, long list, a little bit like you. But those two things, they're gone. I mean, they are gone. They don't qualify now in this new kind of definition. I love it. And as a minimalist kind of advocate, I just love the idea that, you're getting rid of the clothes, you're kind of, restricting all these new things kind of coming in. It just feels then that the right stuff that should come in, and maybe it's not a planned thing, maybe it's just opening the opportunity for the right things then to kind of come over the horizon and almost meet you where you are. That feels like it's kind of, again, going back to your kind of spiritual thing, it feels like that's really what we're creating here, is the space for the right stuff to then fill that void, because it's conscious
100%.
void, isn't it?
I 100% agree with you that, you can't fill a container that's already full. Like, in some respect, we need to empty and allow space. And sometimes those are painful, edits. Sometimes that's some painful stuff. Having to edit out the things, and having published multiple books, I will tell you that the biggest issue from the editor is, no, this is redundant, cut it. And you're like, man, that's one of my favorite sections. Like, yeah, but it doesn't fit the rest of what's going on. Like, great insights, write another book about it, get it out of this one. And that can be painful. And pruning is never comfortable. But pruning is the only way for growth. And as I said, like, my intention for 2026 is pruning. It is being intentional. One of the phrases that I've used this year has been that the people who are in my life are going to know that they are there intentionally and not out of convenience or transaction. That if you're my person, if you're a person who belongs in my life, I'm going to make it clear. And if you're not a person who I'm willing to invest in that way, then I'm not even going to give you the mixed signal that we are, right? If you're not in, you're not in. That's just kind of how that's going to work. And that's part of the elimination. That's part of by getting rid of relationships that I don't need, I'm making room for new ones. Or to expand the ones that already exist. And the same thing with business. Like, I've been cutting clients off of my roster, and normally a business owner panics, when you lose revenue. And I'm like, no, because losing the revenue has actually allowed me the opportunity to lose some of our low performing staff. Like, I'm getting rid of the pain in the behind clients and getting rid of the pain in the behind staff at the same time. And the truth is my existing, the staff that remains will get better me. And my clients that remain will get a better version of me. Like, all of that stuff plays together.
I love this brutal honesty, because it is brutal. Most of us, and particularly us Brits, we're sort of quite apologetic. We're kind of almost like, well, let's see if we can kind of get that nice gentle balance so nobody's offended, everybody wins and stuff. And it's always a compromise. I'm just loving the clarity that you're describing here, because those brutal truths, they are often really needed. And the clarity and the space on the other side of those is just a thing to behold, isn't it? It really is. And you can, as you're saying it, are you feeling that? Because I'm kind of feeling a lifting here, and even in this conversation as you talk and you describe it, it's kind of energetically really powerful, isn't it?
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. That's great to know that your words actually resonate with other people. But I want to be clarified. The brutality, I think the brutal honesty is, it's brutal to me. And it's more of the having to acknowledge that all of the clutter that exists in your life only exists because you gave it permission. It doesn't exist because other people are bad. Like, the only people who are causing problems on my team are people that I haven't removed from the team yet. That's my fault. Like, yes, they're their errors, but if I don't remove you, then they're my errors too. And the same thing exists. If clients aren't succeeding and we're not able to give them the level of service that they require, then they're my failures too. And I have to acknowledge relationships that are not as deep as I would like them to be. That's my failure because I filled my calendar with things other than deepening those relationships. And you know, if I gained weight over the holidays, and I've been so mad at myself, and I'm like, well, those are my failures too. Like nobody stuffed the extra, mashed potatoes in my mouth. Like that was me. And now the time that I spend to optimize myself in the new year is 100% intentional because I talk about the gym because I say, like, why is it that we all admire, and it sounds weird. I'm going to make it not sound as weird as it possibly could, but it's like we all admire people with great bodies, male or female. Like you and I can both see a man who's got a great physique and be like, wow, that guy looks great. And it's not sexual. It's not a sexual conversation. It's an admiration because we know that didn't happen on accident. Like you're admiring the outcome because you know that no one ever got in peak physical condition just genetically. Like you had to participate in that. And we admire the discipline. We admire the dedication that it takes to get in peak physical condition. And again, it's beyond anything that's, physical attraction. It's if I see a person who's successful in business, I have to stop and admire. Great job. That didn't happen on accident. Or it's the reason why people, even in today's AI-driven world, are so mesmerized by people with a PhD. And it's like because it didn't happen on accident. Like you didn't trip into a advanced degree. You at least acknowledge that there was an amount of work that went into that. And there are people who are like, oh, I know stupid people with PhDs. Yeah, me too. And some of the smartest people I know never got a degree. It's irrelevant. But we at least have to stop and go, I know you worked. And I know you participated in making that happen. And I think that's part of that intention. We can't be that intentional about everything, which means we need to start prioritizing the things that are that intentional for us. What are the things that we can and must do that don't require that much intention? Or rather, what are the things that we're passionate about? Because I want to reframe that because that sounded exactly the opposite of what I was trying to say, that the things that we're passionate about don't require work to do. So if you're passionate about those things, they don't require that type of discipline. Like the people who start the new year and then wake up at 4:30 in the morning to go to the gym, it's like you're going to hate this in 2 weeks. How do you build that into your lifestyle? Like what are the things you love? Like I love playing beach volleyball. I live in South Florida. That's an easy workout for me because I enjoy it. Like if I tried to go running every day, I would be miserable. I hate it.
So it's really about kind of creating a sweet spot, isn't it, really? This kind of convergence. It has to be minimalist. It has to be really considered and conscious. It has to be priority. It has to be high value, both for the individual, but also for those around you, as you're describing there. Once we've got this, and I've just got this mental picture of people, listening and watching this, frantically scribbling out all their kind of resolutions and all their plans and stuff, and trying to kind of really minimize this thing. So once they've got to, and of course I'm thinking of myself here, this kind of much lighter lifestyle, both professionally and personally. So you've got the space, you've got some opportunities, you've got some choices. Where would the important stuff then start to fit in? I'm thinking particularly the Zona sort of conversation here, which I want to get into, because there are certain things which are just almost too good to miss, aren't they? And I want to give you a chance to kind of describe and tell us all about kind of, the work that Zona's doing, because I think it's really important then to be almost backfilling in things that are going to then add value from that space that you've created, because otherwise just the space is going to fill, isn't it, with superfluous stuff very, very quickly. Yeah. So where would something like Zona kind of fit in to somebody who has now stripped back all the unnecessary?
Well, yeah, and I think that's fair. So Zona, pivoting into that conversation, Zona is it's an exercise device. It is a handheld isometric exercise device that is It's driven by algorithms that exist within the device to help a person, I would say, complete a perfect isometric exercise session. So in less than 12 minutes a day, the person can do a perfect isometric exercise. And the question always becomes, well, great, like, what does that mean? So to unpack that quickly, we're very familiar with aerobic exercise, but not anaerobic exercise. And we're very familiar with concentric and eccentric movement, which is like the up and the down of a sit-up. But isometric would be, for instance, the stillness of a plank. So what Zona does is it actually creates an environment that allows for a perfect isometric, because what isometric means in Greek is equal measurement. And that is the perfect movement where you're holding a muscle group in a very specific contraction that never moves for a duration of time. So a plank, Zona, whatever, the perfect motion is 2 minutes. That is just the optimal range for the human body, is 2 minutes for an isometric exercise. The problem is it's very, very hard to do an isometric exercise perfectly. And by the way, for a person who is older or perhaps has, issues with, like grandma doing planks is probably not happening in most cases. This can be done sitting on the couch. It's like you're using your grip strength in order to conduct this exercise. Now, I'll go a little bit into the science here, and I will say that people ask questions like, well, is this, by and large, people use this because they want to reduce blood pressure, which is the indication that most people lean on. The reality is that the blood pressure is an issue, obviously, if that elevates. The problem that I have with it is blood pressure, to me, is a downstream symptom. It's not an upstream problem, and yet we treat it like it's a diagnosis. And my answer to it is no, it's a signal, and the signal is letting you know that something else is wrong. And if all you do is quiet the signal, you haven't fixed the problem. And it's I took Tylenol because my knee hurt, but you never fixed what was hurting in your knee. Now you just have a bigger problem in your knee. And we have turned into a society that tries to quiet signals rather than actually solving health problems. And by the way, I think the same is true emotionally. I think the same is true professionally. Like, it's not the how do I do great work when I come to work. It's the how do I not get in trouble from the boss today. And it's like, if you could hire people who came in just to do great work, the boss would never be mad. Like, the boss would be thrilled if everybody came to work to do a good job. But when your goal is to not get in trouble or not get fired, you're never going to do great work because the goal is wrong. You're trying to keep the signal at bay rather than actually deal with strengthening the system. And physiologically, we do the same thing. I would argue and say emotionally, we do the same thing. Like, are you investing in your wife, or are you just showing up with flowers periodically to make her not mad? Very different relationship inputs. That being said, with Zona, what you're doing is you're creating the perfect isometric exercise. Now, what does that mean? We often focus on cardiovascular health as being a heart condition, right? And cardiovascular does refer to the heart, but the heart is the pump. The problem is the pump still has to push blood through the plumbing. And we don't pay enough attention to how do we keep good plumbing. We pay attention to the pump, not the plumbing again. What Zona does is Zona actually isometrics creates an environment where you restrict blood flow through a muscle group, and that blood flow, when released from the isometric, creates what's called shear stress. And shear stress is actually the rate at which blood moves across the endothelium, or the lining of the endothelium, which is actually called the glycocalyx. And the glycocalyx and the endothelium are actually what controls vasodilation. And at the point that the blood flows across the glycocalyx and the endothelium is when the signal is created to either create more nitric oxide in the body, which creates vasodilation, or potassium release. Multiple different signals can do that. But vasodilation is the widening of the blood vessels. When the pump is in trouble is when it's trying to push too much fluid through a narrow opening. The goal is to make sure that the openings are never narrow. So we need to constantly be in a state of, if we're going to fix the upstream problem, the upstream problem is a narrowing of the cardiovascular system systemically. It is the blood vessels are too narrow to allow blood to flow freely. And what we do is we end up putting too much stress on the pump, because now the pump has to pump even harder to push blood through the same amount. It's like a kink in a garden hose. And as we have that kinked garden hose, the water pressure builds up, builds up. And when we release it, you get this spurt of water that comes out, but then the flow runs freely. And that's what we're trying to create. So Zona is an amazing device that actually, like I said, it uses science that was developed in the US Air Force, probably about 30 something years ago. It was first, the science was discovered of using isometrics for cardiovascular health. And then over decades of research has optimized this science, this algorithm that's able to do this. We have clinical trials at the wazoo. We're currently in the process, as I mentioned to you earlier, of actually in FDA clinical trials to get the FDA to say, yep, this is good. They acknowledge all of our work. They just want us to go through the exercise at this point, which will be amazing. But my belief is that Zona is part of that holistic lifestyle, because, Zona and many other things, that you're fixing upstream issues. They're the important things, not the urgent things. So doing an exercise on a Zona device is the upstream. It's the important thing that you did so that the downstream never happens. Taking care of the urgent things lead to never having the urgent things creep up on us, right? My blood pressure is out of control. I had a heart attack. Well, that's a downstream problem that was created because of bad upstream inputs. And I would arguably say that upstreams are typically the important things, downstreams are the urgent. And in that cycle, I believe that solutions like Zona play a huge role in making sure that we're dealing with the important maintenance side of things so that we never get into the symptom relief.
I love that idea of upstream and downstream. I think it just, for anybody who's a process freak, or just love the control over a system or something, then it will make absolutely perfect sense, because it does. I mean, how can anything downstream be successful if the upstream is failing, or could be optimized better? And I just love this idea that, the space that we've been creating in our conversation, which is a very practical, simple thing to do, and then be benefiting from these multiple 12 minutes, if that's all it takes to make sure the upstream is really optimally performing. And of course, all of the spin-off benefits that you're going to find, as you say, not just from the heart pump, but throughout the body, are going to be really quite profound. 12 minutes upstream in all that space that you've just created. It's almost like you're creating this playbook for, well, it's more than biohacking, isn't it? Really, it's the optimum lifestyle, really.
Well, and I'm going to I'll put another thing out there and say that one of the things that we need to also identify about Zona is that often by the time we get to a downstream, there is no fixing the upstream. So for a lot of people, you get to the, oops, I had a heart attack, and there is no going backwards, right? With a system like Zona, with the use of a device like this, one of the things that we do pay attention to is the fact that you can reverse damage. We can actually take something that's already downstream and turn it backwards. Because most of what happens with our cardiovascular system, the plumbing, is it happens over time. It's a slow buildup. It's a slow drip that gets to the point that you actually have so much blockage, because your body adapts. And when you get to the point that it's suddenly a problem, the question is, well, how do I reverse this? Well, then we end up getting medications and blood thinners and statins and all this other kind of stuff. And it's like, well, that's not actually fixing the problem. All you're doing there is you're thinning the blood so that it moves through the channel easier. Well, yeah, but now you end up with 100 other problems. Now you end up with sleep issues. Now you end up with bleeding issues. Now you end up with all these bruising. Like all of these things now take place because of our short-term thinking on the downstream. When you're using this isometric type exercise, like you're literally reversing time on the plumbing. Like you're turning back the clock, you're putting it back the way that it should be, because the body above all things is so intelligent. And we need to be able to use our body's intelligence to let it do what it needs to do, get out of its way, quit trying to do more things and get out of its way, eliminate things so that it can get back to what it knows how to do. And again, that goes back to that minimalist approach, right? Like quit asking, what can I eat differently? Start asking about what can you stop eating that's causing problems, or, which medication should I be on? How about what can I do to eliminate this stuff? And again, it gets back to that, addition by subtraction mindset.
I just love this stuff. I got so many ideas. I so wish I could just be kind of like noting this down and doing it whilst we're talking, Mark, because I mean, there's just so many things I want to do after this conversation. And I'm sure that, the vast majority of people listening to this are thinking, oh, I thought I had this right. No, I've got to make some changes, and it's almost welcoming the change here, isn't it? Really, because what we've been describing, I think, for a lot of people, is going to be very, very different on the other side, but so positive. I mean, the kind of things that Zona's doing is very, very measurable, isn't it? This is the beauty of this: is that if you're looking at one simple measure, potentially, blood pressure, for example, it's very, very easy to measure that. You just get onto Amazon, get yourself a little blood pressure, sort of monitor, and you can kind of actually see the difference. This is, I think, for a lot of people going to be so encouraging, because many things that they're going to be hearing and reading about are so, I guess, almost invisible, or they're kind of hiding in the shadows, and you kind of read that it's a good thing to do, but there's no real kind of tangible evidence in front. But the Zona work can be absolutely seen. We can see it for ourselves.
Agreed. And that exactly it. Like it's a measurable outcome. It's a measurable input. It's a measurable output. And I tell people, like Zona is the treadmill. The blood pressure cuff, as you mentioned, is the scale. That is, Zona is doing the work, and then you measure it using some other tool to see if the tool worked. And there's multiple different ways of testing this stuff, but the reality is at the end of it, it's a blood pressure cuff, right? That's the ultimate scorecard for cardiovascular health for most people. There's other things, but I mean that's the normal one for most people. That is, if my blood pressure is good, my cardiovascular health must be good. And it's amazing the effect that this has on that primary output.
That's amazing.
We did, Neil, set up a coupon code for you. So any of your listeners who are interested in using the device can use coupon code NEIL100, NEIL 100, and get $100 off the purchase of the device. It does have a 90-day money-back guarantee. So if anybody uses it, and over the course of 90 days, if you're actually using it, don't see an impact on your scores, send it back. It's easy enough to do, but that way people can actually get that chance to use it. And absolutely, I recommend it. In fact, my dad uses it. He has high blood pressure, and in fact went into AFib not too long ago. And, he's been using the device to try to bring his blood pressure down and get off of the blood pressure medications they put him on. And I'm like, good. Like it works. It's exercise. That's the thing. Like, this isn't snake oil. It's exercise. It's just a very specific type of exercise. And I laugh because, like, if I told you to jump on a treadmill and walk 30 minutes a day, nobody questions that science. If I tell you to for 12 minutes a day to use this, hand grip machine to do isometrics, everybody turns into a researcher. And it's like, no, it's exercise. And people are like, well, what if? It's exercise. Exercise is not bad. Under any conditions, exercise is not bad. Move your body.
There's sage advice from Dr. Mark Young there, everybody. Mark, this has just been brilliant. I could just carry on. I know you're a super busy guy, so I've got to let you go. But I just so appreciate, the kind of the guidance, the advice, and really the wisdom that you brought to this conversation. just got so many things to do and think about now, which is always a good barometer for me that the quality of the conversation has been so good. So
Right.
really, really appreciate your time today, Mark. And,
Thank you so much.
and good luck with the approvals as well.
I appreciate that. Yeah. And again, I'll make sure that code goes in the notes, and the website is just zona.com, but we'll get all that set up for you and we'll make it work.
Wonderful.
Thank you,
Mark
sir.
Young. Thank you.
Good seeing you.